What's up, guys? Jordan from BRX here. Wanted to put together a little presentation because it's that time of year where spring's starting to wrap up around the country, both kind of in the tail end of the season in Wisconsin here and also elsewhere. So wanted to make a little presentation just talking about how you can approach the summer and the off season to see best results with training, right? Because most people who want to play at the collegiate level or past that in baseball, summer is a big time to get out in front of schools, and obviously the off season is a big time for developing. So wanted to put something together to talk about just how you can best do that and have the most progress and do it in a way that's most efficient for you. Okay, so to start with kind of where things are at in the baseball training sphere, I guess you'd call it. So looking at things like social media, the growth of a bunch of private facilities, basically just information is more freely available today. With that, there's obviously a lot of information from a lot of different voices out there. Okay, if you go scan through TikTok, Instagram, anything like that, you're probably going to see a lot of different ideas, conflicting ideas, just little snippets of someone's training philosophy that might not necessarily tell the whole picture on how to actually improve and do it in the best way for your career and you personally, because everyone's a little bit different, right? What worked for one guy is not necessarily going to work for another guy, okay? But at the end of the day, everyone's kind of chasing the same thing. Like if you're a pitcher, you want good velocity, you want good command, you want good off-speed stuff. Obviously, you want to maintain health while doing that. If you're a hitter, obviously it comes down to how well you can play defense, how well you can hit in game, type of power you produce, arm strength, all those things, right? So looking for the same things, but how people are going to get there is going to be different, okay? And so all the information can kind of make that a little hazy as far as if you're an athlete trying to know where to start and where to get better, okay? So when we jump into how to actually approach training to get good quality results and do it in a way that's safe and efficient in terms of how much time you spend and how much results you get, there's a lot of different directions you could go. Like you could be a guy who tries to improve velocity by chasing strength. You could be a guy who tries to get there by just improving your mechanics, whatever it might be, or just go like be that guy who jumps into a velocity program, right? So there's a lot of different ways to get there, okay? And if you want to get the best results, it's important that you don't chase a bunch of things that are conflicting, okay? So the old analogy is like, don't chase two separate rabbits at once to end up with none, okay? So basically, if you think of that in a training sense, like don't chase separate things that don't really align with what you really need, okay? There's ways to achieve multiple goals at once. Like you can get stronger while improving mechanics, improving health, whatever it might be. The important thing to remember is that everyone's got a limited amount of time, right? Every high school kid has to deal with school from 7:30 a.m. till 2:30 to 3 o'clock. You got practice, you got hang out with your girlfriend, whatever it might be, hang out with your family. There's a finite amount of time that you can spend each day, okay? And so you don't necessarily want to spend too much time doing stuff, doing too many things that are just kind of watering down what you're getting out of it, or do stuff that's not going to produce results, right? You want to, at the end of the day, there's a time constraint on everyone. Everyone, like, if you want to play at a Power 5 school, you probably got to be in a position by August 1st going into your junior year to get recruited by those schools, or it's going to be an uphill battle, right? There are always those unique cases where you have a guy who gains 5 miles an hour, starts throwing a lot harder, and ends up catching the attention of an SEC school like late in the process. But the reality of the situation is you probably got to be to a certain point with your development at a certain time in your life if you want to achieve goals like that, okay? So being efficient with what you're doing and where you're spending your time and energy is a big key, okay? And so this brings me to the importance of coaches, right? There's, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of private facilities, good coaches out there that are starting to educate themselves, and there's a lot more training methods getting pushed out that people can get better, right? You see younger kids improving, like the product of youth baseball and amateur baseball is improving every year, right? Like in our facility alone, we just had a 12-year-old go 74, which we haven't really even trained for velocity. He just kind of did that. He's just been doing the right stuff from a training perspective. We've had guys who threw mid-upper nines in high school. Like it happens, right? People get better. People are like, the game is getting better, okay? And so where coaches come into play is we can help guide the process and help you make sure that your time is well spent, okay? And that you don't have setbacks or go too far in one area and then have to kind of take a step back to correct something that might have went wrong, right? And so there's a lot of inputs that go into being a high-level baseball player, right? If it was as simple as if you lifted X amount and did this in a vertical jump and did this with whatever weighted baseball, then you'd throw 95, then everyone would do it, right? It's a complex process to throw at a high level or be a good hitter, whatever it might be. So kind of understanding where all those inputs might play into things is where us as coaches, that's what we take pride in here. That's what a lot of good coaches can do. Okay. And so those knowledgeable coaches who are experienced, they understand how to align those areas of improvement so that you can target your low-hanging fruit, basically your biggest needs for improvement, and get maximal improvement. Okay. So filter out the time, the amount of time and the amount of wasted energy that each athlete might have. Okay. So basically narrow your focus, lets you attack what you need to attack and get better. Okay. For an example of this, okay, let's take it. This is a common thing we see here. Okay. Freshman, sophomore in high school, right-handed pitcher comes in throwing low 70s. Okay. In this example, 73. So doing sport-specific training or like velocity-based training or worrying about pitch design on the mound, like that's probably not going to be what they need to get where they want to go, right? At the end of the day, that stuff's going to matter, but we can improve that stuff by improving their low-hanging fruits first. Okay. So for example, in this case, most 15-year-old kids that come in here are undersized, underdeveloped in terms of physical, like the physical side of things. So they don't need to hyper focus on the throwing side. Like obviously having a good throwing program is going to be key for how quick you see those results, because the skill matters at the end of the day. That's the biggest part of this. But for them to try to worry about being super specific with things is not the way to go. Okay, so the first priority for them should be just becoming a good general athlete. So for example, some things that I like to look at with guys, like to see where they're at in terms of a training sense, is like, can a guy do a split squat with a certain percentage of his body weight? Can he squat a certain weight? Like that's gonna be different for everyone, right? Like the guys who are a little bit shorter or like stockier type guys are probably gonna need to bring more like output to the table in terms of how much force they can produce, versus your taller, skinny guys. Like they don't necessarily need to be as weight room strong, because that might actually offset what they're doing on like the movement side of things, but they just need enough to kind of power what they're trying to do. So there's some things that we'll look at, but generally like good quality movement, coordination, and a good foundation of strength. What the foundation of strength is going to be for each guy is different, but that's kind of the things we'll look at there. Okay, that should be their first priority in this case. If we organize things right, we can get all that done. Like we could get them better as a general athlete through training. We can even improve their pitch design just by focusing on that, right? Because think of it like this: they get stronger, they move better, they start throwing harder, more consistently, they improve their command because they have better coordination and control of their body. And because they're throwing harder and executing pitches better, their pitches are playing up without any pitch design work. So they're a better pitcher overall just from becoming a better athlete, okay? And one of the biggest factors of what's gonna make a pitch a good pitch is how hard you throw it, right? And obviously we wanna do that in a safe way and take care of our arm doing it, but that's a big component of that, okay? And then another scenario, take the opposite end of the spectrum. We got senior left-handed pitcher, low 90s, goal is to get drafted or end up at a Power 5 school and get innings right away, right? So let's say this guy has a couple years of consistent training. They have a solid strength base. They move really well in the weight room. They're strong, explosive, things like that. So an athlete like this is going to need a lot more hyper-specific work. Like we need to really dial in on what we're doing on the throwing side of things, what we're doing on the movement side of things, what we're creating in terms of the weight room and how that's going to carry over to our throwing, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters, right? The weight room is just a tool to get us where we want to go. We don't want the guys who take it too far and just turn themselves into power lifters and then they can't move at all when they get on the field, right? And a common thing that I'll kind of describe that with is like a lot of people when they think of the weight room, they just think more weight's better, more body weight, more weight on the bar, whatever it is, but more is just more and better is better, right? There's not a correlation between the two. So you can take things too far there as well. And that's where like our super specific work and really honing in on the small details comes into play, okay? So for a guy like this, if they focus on training some more specific qualities of movement and how they produce force, how they absorb force in the weight room, make small mechanical tweaks, worry about what their pitches look like and how they can execute them, that's probably gonna put them in the best situation. They've earned that right by building that good general base, okay? So those are just a couple examples of where we might steer things differently in terms of how an athlete develops, okay? And so how we approach this here, and obviously I'm biased because I work here, but I think we do a good job of this, is it's basic test, train, retest model, okay? So basically test you when you show up, figure out what the low-hanging fruit is, put a training plan together to figure out how to attack it and go after it, retest to see if the work paid off and how much it paid off, and then recalibrate and kind of start with the train side of things again, okay? So first visit, we'll run through movement tests, general performance assessment, skill assessment. Skill's the top of the priority list, right? At the end of the day, I want you to be good on the field. And then we kind of use the movement and general performance tests to give us ideas of what we might need to do to boost that, okay? And then from that, we'll train. So we'll talk about what your priorities are. We'll put the plan together, get after it from there. Then we'll retest, okay? So we use equipment like we use force plates, we use sprint timing gates, Proteus, obviously TrackMan, pitching and hitting. That's kind of how we attack it, right? So we have the data available. We kind of look at all of it as a whole, figure out what your low-hanging fruits are, and then go from there, okay? So if you have any questions about how this might work for you, shoot us a message or look through our, go through the link in our website, and we'll help you get to a point where you can achieve your baseball goals, okay? So that's what I got for today.